Luis, dressed in a black down jacket, walked in with snowflakes fluttering around him. "Excuse me, please." Luis spoke calmly, his voice cool. Mateo was staring at his handsome face in a daze when suddenly he came to his senses, quickly stepped aside, and apologized. As he walked out the door, he glanced back at Luis, a puzzled look in his eyes. It seemed like he was trying to recall where he had seen this person before. Ding! Wisnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Is it snowing? I raised my eyebrows and looked outside, smiling. It's so fitting for it to snow on Christmas. Luis nodded without saying a word. While the students were sticking their heads out to see the snow, he walked over and quickly pecked me on the lips. His lips were cold. It surprised me so much that my eyes widened. I lightly punched him in annoyance, giving him a fierce look. "What are you doing? There are still people around." But Luis just smirked and raised an eyebrow confidently. "As your secret boyfriend, sneakily kissing you is part of my basic manners. It's to prevent your friend from introducing you to a new boyfriend. When did I ever hide you? We've been openly dating for over a month. I've just been seeing fewer people lately to avoid Grant. Not many people know about our relationship." The clock on the wall struck 6. I tilted my head at Luis and announced the end of the class to the students. By the time the last student was picked up by their parents, it was completely dark outside. The street was lit with festive lights, complemented by the falling snow, adding a touch of romance. Luis embraced me from behind, pulling me close to him. His thin lips lightly touched my ear, his voice magnetic. "The atmosphere is all set. Want to sneak out for a date? My girlfriend, this guy, never changes." At 10 minutes past 10 in the evening, my usually inactive social media updated a post. "Merry Christmas," to a certain sarcastic boyfriend who keeps asking for an official announcement. The accompanying picture showed hands tightly clasped between me and someone else. Mateo finally remembered who Luis was. Luis Cardone, at 25, became the youngest heir to the Cardone group. On the day he took over, he announced his intention to turn away from his father's Mafia path, clean up his act, and ordered the entire Cardone family to steer clear of any illegal activities. With his own efforts, within just 6 months, he propelled the Cardone group from scratch to a well-known top 15 enterprise in the capital. How could such a controversial figure appear in Miley's small pottery workshop? Surely he wasn't there to learn pottery? The phone buzzed, and the group chat suddenly exploded. God, Miley made it official? And I noticed something crucial. The background of their hand-holding photo is a bed. At 10 last night. Are they living together? Is it with Grant? No, last night Grant was at my place drinking alone. Seems like he was waiting for our message, staring at his phone all night. The group fell silent for a few seconds, then someone quietly typed, "Could he be waiting for Miley?" The conversation awkwardly ended with this last message. No one spoke in the chat box anymore. Mateo felt his heart sink, quickly exited, and opened Miley's social media account. Seeing the ring on her slender finger, he gasped in shock. Gosh, this is bad. The scumbag finally regretted. The day after Christmas was a weekend, and the pottery workshop was closed. I came out from Luis's residence, and instead of going home first, I purposely went to the mall. I picked a gift for Mateo and his wife for their 3rd anniversary. Oh, and on the side, I also bought a tie for Luis as a belated Christmas gift. The elevator door opened to the floor where my own apartment was located and then opened outward. Just as I was about to step out, a dark figure suddenly rushed towards me. My body was forcefully pushed against the elevator wall. I cried out in pain, but my voice was blocked by a domineering kiss. The strong smell of alcohol lingered on the tip of my nose. Grant held my face with bloodshot eyes, almost biting my lips with his intense kiss. The pain made me frown. "Let go, let me go." I pushed Grant's shoulders desperately. At the moment his tongue rudely pried open my lips, I bit down hard. Hiss! Grant winced in pain and finally let me go. I didn't dare to stay for a moment. I took a step and ran. But just as I ran out, he grabbed my wrist. "Can I eat you? Why are you running?" Grant held me tightly and roared angrily. I shook my hand and smashed all the gift boxes on his head. "So, were you having a fit just now?" "Yes." Grant kicked the scattered boxes on the ground. His chest heaved violently, his gaze firmly fixed on my ring finger, as if he was about to pounce and bite my neck in the next second. "Where did you go last night? Why didn't you come back all night?" I just felt puzzled. "It seems like where I went has nothing to do with you, right?" Grant's body trembled suddenly. He wiped his face with his hand, his eyes fierce. Who is he? Such a familiar question. I looked up, quietly watching him, without answering. Grant had already realized it himself. His face turned pale, whether it was due to drunkenness or something else. His body swayed slightly, his arm propped against the wall. "Did he force you?" "No, we just got together." Grant closed his eyes, hiding the cracks in his eyes. "Break up with him. Aren't you the one who wants to be with me? Fine, we'll be together. Break up with him, and I can pretend nothing happened." After speaking, Grant sighed lightly, as if he had completely surrendered to some invisible force. "Miley, you win. During this time, I've missed you a lot. We'll be together, and I won't have anyone else in the future." "Oh, I understand now. So he thought I used an official announcement last night to play tricks and provoke him?" "Grant Musso, I'm not you. I know my own heart. I liked you, and I I would pursue you openly. I won't be childish enough to use someone else to measure the victories and losses in a relationship. Grant's face turned pale in an instant. His fingers curled inward, but he couldn't make a fist. His eye sockets were red, revealing an extremely ugly smile. It's impossible. You clearly like me so much. How is it possible that you fell in love with someone else in such a short time? I smirked, with a hint of sarcasm in my tone. How can you take my love for you when I was young seriously? Not wanting to argue with him anymore, I finished speaking and walked towards the door of the house. The password beeped. As I opened the door, I heard his trembling plea from behind. Can I start loving you again from now on? This time, let me pursue you. I turned back in slow motion, disbelief written all over my face. Don't you think it's too late for that? Grant looked defeated. Suddenly, he felt so uncomfortable that he didn't know what to do. I was just not in love with you at that time. Or maybe I hadn't realized I loved you. Mateo was right. He really regrets it. He always said he would never regret. But when he saw a photo of her holding another man's hand, he regretted not tearing that man apart. This was his Miley. The Miley who always followed him, ever present, whenever he turned around. How did she get taken away by someone else along the way, and he couldn't redeem her? How can an adult not even understand what they want? It's just pretending to be deaf and dumb, arrogantly confident. The excuse of loving without self-awareness is often used by scumbags to cover up their insatiable greed. At the elevator entrance, Luis appeared there, with his arms crossed against his chest, leaning on the wall. In a beige hoodie and black sweatpants, he looked oddly flashy. When Grant's eyes fell on Luis's face, he suddenly narrowed, with a clear sense of crisis in his gaze. Obviously, he had already matched the present Luis with the man who had challenged him over the phone that night. Luis Cardone. So, it's you. Luis smirked, bringing his index finger and middle finger together in a salute across his forehead, exuding a naturally charming rogue between his brows. Hello, the ex-fiance who only realizes regret after losing. Grant's face immediately darkened, but Luis seemed completely oblivious to his gloominess, leisurely scanning the scattered gift boxes on the ground. Finally, his gaze settled on the discarded tie. He looked up at me, a smile playing on his lips. Is this for me? A gift for being your boyfriend? I rolled my eyes impatiently. No. Oh, Luis responded, then bent down to pick up the tie, hung it around his neck, walked to my side, looking composed. Help me tie it. I shot him a glare and pulled him into the house. Why are you wearing a tie with a hoodie? It's fine. I look handsome in anything. The door closed behind us. I didn't turn back, but I still heard the melancholic and lost murmur behind me. But you clearly learned to tie a tie back, then just for me. I eventually attended Mateo's banquet with his wife. Luis, dressed sharply in a suit, stood tall and immediately caught the attention of everyone present as soon as he got out of the car. Mateo approached him, extending his hand with a warm smile. Hello, Luis. I am Mateo Earls. Luis shook his hand back, smiling equally friendly. But the words he said made me couldn't help but cover my face. Right. You also think my tie looks handsome, don't you? This tie was the gift Miley gave me on the day she publicly announced I was her boyfriend. Luis, you really know how to speak sarcastically, and you really hold grudges. Mateo probably still doesn't know his words. With this move, he is probably retaliating for that sentence he said on Christmas Day. Let me introduce you to a new boyfriend. People arrived at the banquet one after another, and it became lively. With Luis's presence there, even if he didn't feel like socializing, he couldn't avoid being greeted by people. I found a quiet corner, eating tiramisu while watching Mateo on stage holding his wife's hand, crying like a fool. It was quite emotional. Mateo used to be a scumbag. Pursuing his wife was like walking into a crematorium, but he actually managed to win her back. Suddenly, a figure stood beside me. I didn't turn my head, but I knew who it was. I had anticipated meeting him when I came here today. Compared to the drunken mess that Grant was that day, he looked decent today. But the fatigue in his expression and the bloodshot eyes gave away that things were not going well for him recently. Miley. Grant spoke, struggling to call my name. Looking at the lovers embracing on stage, he raised his hand to me. Opening his palm, a ring lay in his hand. It seemed that he had clenched it too hard before, leaving marks on his palm. Let's get married too, okay? I'm sorry. I was so late in proposing to you all those years. I won't let you down again in the future. I will treat you well, and only you for the rest of my life. I put down the fork in my hand, feeling no appetite. I picked up the ring that had been worn on my finger for so long. In his eyes that finally lit up, I turned and opened the French window. The ring traced a parabola in the air, and eventually, it fell into the swimming pool. Grant's body swayed, his already pale face drained of color, his lips trembling. He stuttered anxiously. Miley, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. I didn't cherish you before. I was foolish. I've changed now. I will pursue you again. But you've blocked my contact information. Grant still couldn't bear to recall the despair he felt when he found out he had been blocked yesterday, just when he had finally found a way. At the moment he saw hope, that red exclamation mark shredded his shattered expectations. Miley, I'm not asking you to forgive me and accept me now, but at least, leave me a way to make amends, a way to pursue you again. Turn left when you go out. A scornful laughter filled with coldness suddenly sounded. Before I could react, I was pulled into a firm and warm embrace. Luis hugged me possessively, glaring arrogantly at Grant. Do you know the way to the crematorium? I'll help you collect the ashes when the time comes. Being stirred up by Grant like this, it wasn't good for me and Luis to stay any longer, afraid of disrupting Mateo's banquet. So, we said our goodbyes in advance and left. Aren't we going home? I asked, watching Luis navigate with his head down, feeling puzzled. No, I'm in a good mood today, he replied. I'll take you to the beach to watch the sunrise. I really believed in Luis's tricks. Yes, to watch the sunrise. But he didn't mention that the time before watching the sunrise was spent fiery in the car. When the emotions were intense, at that moment of the greatest yearning, Luis raised my hand, and then a brief coolness passed through my ring finger. I had a moment of clarity for a brief second, but then I fell into the next second where our fingers were tightly intertwined. Mateo called when the sky was about to break dawn. I leaned weakly against Luis's chest, still sounding sleepy. What's wrong? But it wasn't Mateo on the other end of the phone, it was another mutual friend of ours. Miley, come and see Grant. He spent hours diving in the swimming pool to find the ring you dropped. How can someone endure that in the middle of winter? He fainted as soon as he got ashore. He's in the hospital now, nearly burned himself out. You two grew up together since childhood, please come and see him. Upon hearing this, I pursed my lips, then said lightly, is he awake? If he's conscious, give him the phone. There was silence for over 10 seconds on the other end of the line. Then, it was Grant's weak, hoarse voice, with a hint of tears. Miley, I found the ring. I found it. Can you? I interrupted him slowly. You're really going all out with these tricks. Stop wasting time and don't delay me and Luis watching the sunrise. There was a sudden stop on the other end of the phone. I also froze, because just a moment ago, as I lowered my head, I saw the diamond ring on my ring finger. Under the sudden appearance of the sun, it emitted a dazzling light. Luis put his arm around my waist, half circling me in his embrace. His other hand touched the diamond ring, his voice deep. If you wear my ring, you'll be tied to me for the rest of your life. If you dare to run away. A smile played on my lips, my eyebrows raised slightly. I know, you'll turn me into ashes,